Welcome to Mac Stories Unwind. Today I am joined by Federico Viticci as usual.
Hello.
As well as, hello Federico, boy you jumped in there. Have you been drinking a lot of espresso this morning?
Not enough, I can tell you that.
Okay.
Not enough.
All right. Well, before you get going and talking, I want to introduce our very special guest, Mr. Jonathan Reed, who's also with us today.
Hi guys, how are you doing?
Doing really well. You know, the reason Jonathan is here is because this is our monthly AV Club show. What we have done, and I think we explained this a couple of weeks back on Mac Stories, is that we have rolled the AV Club into Mac Stories Unwind. So once a month, we will be conducting an AV Club live in our town hall in Discord, which is something that Club Mac Stories Plus and Premier members can join. They get to help us pick the media that we are going to discuss each month, as well as listen live and ask questions during the show. And then once we do that, we put it out early, a day early in the Mac Stories Plus feed, which is for all club members. And that's early, ad-free, and in high bit rate audio. And then last but not least, a version of the show, which will have ads from time to time, will show up on Friday as usual in the regular Mac Stories Unwind feed. So I just wanted to remind everybody that's kind of what we've done. We've kind of rolled together AV Club, the existing Mac Stories Unwind show, and Mac Stories Unplugged, which used to be a club exclusive podcast, but now instead of being monthly, it's a segment that's weekly on Mac Stories Unwind. So with that, I think we should get into our topic today, which is
The Last
of Us.
Yeah.
And The Last of Us is a video game from a decade ago.
Yeah, don't say that because it makes me feel old.
Yeah, I was doing my research and I was shocked that it was 2013. But it was 2013, Ticci. And here we are a decade later talking about not only the game itself, but a TV show based on the game. So
The one thing I want to say before we kick it off, one of the perks of doing this live in Discord is that we can keep an eye on the Town Hall Voice Chats channel, where members who are listening live right now, it's a Thursday, and this will come out later as a recorded episode, but some folks are listening live, and they can ask questions, they can say things, and I believe this person, John. Rob says, the real Last of Us is the friends we make along the way. And I thought,
well, you know what, Rob? That's a great sentiment, Rob. Thank you very much. Rob and I recorded an episode of Ruminate yesterday that everybody should be listening to, too. That's a podcast I do that's not related to Mac Stories. So.
Rob also says that when the game came out, it was working at a video game store, and they sold 200 copies in 20 minutes. So,
oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Wow.
I remember it was a bit. So let's talk about the
Were
game.
they just throwing it at customers or something?
Just
Yeah.
give it away for free.
They're just throwing
like
money out the
frisbees.
window, like the gift. Yeah, I wanted to start with you, Federico, because I think you probably have the most history with this game of the three of us.
Yeah. So I played the Last of Us on PS4, and I'm pretty sure that at the time that was the first remaster of this game. This game has been remastered and remade, if my terminology is correct. It was remade a few months ago on PS5, but it was also remastered from PS3 on the PS4, and that's where I played the original game. I played it around, I guess it was 20, because the remastered, like the optimized version for PS4, I think it came out just like not even a year after the original, if
right.
memory serves well. So yeah, I played it on PS4 and finished the original game on PS4. Now, I can tell you that The Last of Us, the original one, is, I would say, quite comfortably in the top 20 list of favorite games of all time for me. I wouldn't say top 5, I wouldn't say top 10, but top 20. I think it is one of the best games I've played in my lifetime so far. And that's because of the story and the gameplay and sort of the fact that it was one of the first games, at least for me, to really blend the interactive nature of a video game with the cinematic aspect of a really good sort of movie quality story. And I said at least for me, because I think it's necessary to say that I never played a Metal Gear Solid game, which I know, that's the kind of game that tried the whole sort of cinematic, let's make it both a movie and a video game thing many years before The Last of Us. But
Right.
still, The Last of Us was also a difficult game for me because most of my gaming time is at night. I play most of my video games when my girlfriend goes to sleep and my dogs are sleeping, and I usually reserve a couple of hours for myself. And The Last of Us being, it's a creepy TV show, and it's also an even creepier game because you are fully in control. And, it's not exactly the sort of relaxing, chill, experience. Even when, for example, now I'm playing Zelda Tears of the Kingdom and playing at night, there are some areas of the game and some fights in the game that are kind of tense, and it's not exactly, unwind material before you go to sleep. Now imagine,
Right.
now imagine playing The Last of Us with a horde of zombies coming at you, or clickers, but ultimately the story and the characters made up for it. It's also the kind of game that really resonated with me, and this is also very much present in the TV show. The idea of nature sort of reclaiming spaces occupied by humanity is it's one of those things that really works for me. Like this idea of this used to be a huge city and now it's been taken over by nature. And so the famous scene in the video game, which was also present in the TV show, when Joel and Ellie, I believe they look out and they're in Boston or in New York, I don't recall. But
It's Boston. Yeah.
There's the giraffe, and they see the giraffe. It's just like roaming in this wilderness that used to be a city. That sort of theme, that gimmick really works for me. And in the original The Last of Us, in the original game, when you first walk out and you see this horizon of destroyed skyscrapers and just cars abandoned 20 years ago and just nature everywhere, it was incredible to play in the game.
Yeah, I really enjoyed that they started this game in Boston. I think the narrative, part of it is that my wife's from Boston. I know that city really well. And so to me, it felt like, there were, the landmarks were all recognizable to me. They were
nice.
places that I've been and I've visited over and over the years. And so it really felt, it kind of latched onto me really quickly that way because it felt more personal. And I like those kind of games too. This game is incredibly stressful. I don't play it late at night. I revisited the remake over the winter. And that was really the first time my kids had played the game, and I've watched them play the game, the PS4 version, but I never really played it myself until the PS5 remake. And they did a fantastic job. That remake, the voice acting's all the same, the mechanics are basically the same, but the artwork is really completely different, and it really holds up really well with those, I guess, more high resolution and more detailed graphics. And it makes it even more tense in some ways, I think.
Yeah. Have you played the game, Jonathan?
I unfortunately haven't, no. So I'm not a massive gamer myself. So I was coming to the TV show fresh. But I would be interested to know, it's been remade or remastered, 2 or 3 times. So people are obviously enjoying replaying this game. So what do you get out of replaying it, especially if maybe you've beaten some boss or you're beating some challenge or something? If you're redoing that, what's the value in do it again? What do you get out of it if it's been remastered?
I think you can get different things out of that sort of experience. It is kind of a more high fidelity version of the game, but I also think it's similar to people who like to reread books or rewatch movies or revisit TV shows, is that because it's so narrative driven, it does lend itself to replayability in that way. I personally have not replayed it. As I said, I came to it new over the past winter, and I have not completed it yet because I was kind of moving between that and Death Stranding over the winter as I kind of waited for Tears of the Kingdom. So I played it for a while, but I do want to go back to it because I really have enjoyed the experience so far.
Yeah, and I think what they've done in the remake, Jonathan, is also like a lot of a lot of quality of life improvements in terms of the gameplay and the menus, and I believe some lines of dialogue have been changed. So I guess if you are like a massive The Last of Us fan, even though you remember the story, it still makes sense to play the game. If only like from a visual perspective, I think especially on PS5, they've done a really good job. Personally, because it's not like my favorite game of all time, I'm not gonna replay this game. Once you know the story, I don't know. I guess it's different from watching a movie multiple times, because like I can still watch Titanic for the 11th time in my life, and I'm still gonna enjoy it. But playing a game for like the third time, you gotta do the level again and upgrade all your gear. Like, it's not just about the story. I guess I would maybe watch just the cutscenes again, but not play the game again.
Yeah, but you could do that on YouTube, right?
But I can do that on YouTube,
yes.
exactly.
Yeah,
which is what I did.
Get that. Right. I'm not a huge replayer of games or a huge rewatcher of movies or TV shows or really reading books. So, I mean, I understand why that's a lot of people do that. It's just not. I've got too little time to kind of like revisit the same stuff over and over again. So I tend to always look for something new.
I guess that shows how immersive the world is itself, that they and how much of a good job they've done on it in the game, is that people want to go back in and sort of immerse themselves back into that game again, not necessarily just complete all the tasks again and do all the challenges. I guess it's just actually going into that whole world and sort of walking around in it that people enjoy doing. I can imagine that's maybe one of the key reasons.
This episode of Mac Stories Unwind is brought to you by SaneBox. SaneBox is the all-in-one solution to email clutter and overload, so you can spend less time managing your email and more time on what matters. It works with any email client or service and any device, literally anywhere that you're checking your email. Oh, and there's also nothing to download. It all just works. SaneBox is like having a personal email assistant that automatically organizes your inbox, so you don't have to, saving valuable time. It works in the background, making sure that the most important messages are floated to the top of your inbox. Recently, they added something called Deep Clean, and it's a free tool that you can use whether you're a subscriber or not. It's the perfect tool for cleaning out old emails from your inbox, which will keep you more organized than ever. You can clean out old messages automatically, so you won't need to pay your email provider for more storage, and you can enjoy a completely uncluttered inbox. Just run Deep Clean and review your messages, which are organized by sender, making it easy to decide which ones to delete and which ones to keep. Sign up today and save $25 on any subscription. You'll see big benefits immediately as the message count in your inbox drops, and you'll be able to maintain control going forward with SaneBox's help. Just go to sanebox.com/MacStories to learn more and sign up today. Again, that URL is sanebox.com/MacStories. Our thanks to SaneBox for their support of the show. Why don't we dive into the show itself, though, because that is kind of the main event for this particular episode of Mac Stories Unwind. And I do want to talk about this because I think that this is one of the most unique adaptations of a video game I've ever seen, because so many of them have been done so poorly, both on television and in movies. And I want to talk a little bit, I guess, about why we think this show has succeeded. Because I guess first maybe I should throw it to each of you guys and get your broad overview of what you think of it. I mean, I think I've already kind of given away that I really like this show. I thought it was a fantastic show, and I'm looking forward to it continuing. How about you, Jonathan?
Yeah, I really enjoyed the TV show. I was, I guess, similar to you, a little bit skeptical at first as to, adapting a video game into a TV show because the adaptations into films and TV shows of games have just not been very successful. There's not been many good ones, but it was a HBO show, so that was kind of reassuring. And Craig Mazin, the writer or the creator, he did the TV show Chernobyl, which I thought was utterly amazing. I thought it was stunning, fantastic. So I was quietly hopeful, and the cast was good. So I was really really looking forward to it. And yeah, it didn't disappoint. I think just in the same way you're talking about the world of the games, they developed the world of the TV show so well that it was instantly engaging for me. And I think from the first episode, I was in 100% and excited to watch the rest of it. How about you, Federico?
I haven't finished watching the TV show. I guess it's called Max now instead of HBO Max. Right.
Right.
But I mean, what I've seen so far, like I still need to watch like 3-4 episodes. I think I loved it. Like I was a huge fan of Craig Mazin for Chernobyl. One of the best things I think I've seen in recent years, and just the a couple of things I want to point out that I really liked. The production value of the whole thing, like
Definitely.
it feels, you know, when you remember a video game from your childhood and you remember it like, and in your mind it looks perfect, right? And then you go back and revisit it and you realize, oh man, the graphics here suck, and you know, it's not what I was picturing in my mind. I got the opposite effect of that 2 times this year. First time with Metroid Prime Remastered. That game makes the original Metroid Prime look like how I remembered it in my mind. And the second time was The Last of Us TV show. The Last of Us TV show makes The Last of Us, the game from 10 years ago, look like what I remember with rose-tinted glasses in my mind. Like, it looks perfect. Like, it's the setting, the costume design, the zombie design, the virtual effects, like everything looks stunning. And the second thing,
Right.
which maybe we can talk about, is how they were able to follow the source material very closely down to specific encounters, right? With the clickers, for example, and the scene from the Boston Museum from episode 2, I believe. But also how they were able to take some liberties here and there, and especially with the Bill and Frank episode. The Bill and Frank episode, which I believe is episode 3,
Yeah.
has
think
to
that's
be
right.
one of the best TV episodes I've seen in the last few years. Like, if not ever. Such a beautiful, beautiful story that does not exist in the original game. Like, the character of Bill and Frank, totally different in the game.
Right. Bill's in the
Bill's
game.
in the
It's
game.
just that that storyline is not
I
part
believe
of the
you never
action
see
of the
Frank,
game, right?
actually, in the original
Yeah,
game.
I think Frank's they discover his body, and
Yep.
he's killed himself because he's been bitten. So before he could turn. So yeah, and they only really hint at the fact that they were together. And I think that I totally agree with you. It's absolutely stunning episode. I think one thing that I really loved about it is the fact that in the game it kind of has that. There's this trope in TV shows and film called "kill your gays," where it's about if two same-sex people get into a relationship, quite often they will kill one of them off, and it often feels like a punishment for being gay. And that sort of happens in the game, although we don't really see their relationship. But what they did with this TV show is they course-corrected that, avoided this trope, and instead created a beautiful love story that I think that, you know, would connect to anyone, you know, straight, gay, or whatever. And I think that was the amazing thing about this, that turn in this storyline. And Craig Mazin talked about how he looked at the video game, and with each part, they looked at what is it worth changing this bit? Will they get value out of it? And I think that with this romantic tale, they created something beautiful, which wasn't in the video game, and also improved on something that in the video game maybe wasn't such a good part of the video game. And yeah, I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, I think that episode really points to kind of a bigger picture way that this story was handled, which is it didn't always just follow the action of the game. It was interspersed with these backstories and stories like Bill and Frank, which I think for a very intense show worked very well, because I back in the day, in the early seasons, I used to watch The Walking Dead, and that show I think fell into a trap where it just had to keep one-upping itself with the the drama and the gore and the scariness of the zombies, whereas here there's more of a cycle up and down of the storyline, where you had weeks where that you didn't, you were focused on maybe one or two characters, and they're not necessarily always the main characters, but they do add to the overall story and kind of give you a break from, just being a story about running through an abandoned landscape, shooting at zombies and clickers and things. And I do want to go back a minute to what Federico said in his first point, which is, to me, is very interesting about this story, is that in a way, the game has a parallel to the show, in the sense that remaking this game has it with the PS5 in mind, with new graphics, has kind of preserved, I think, what a lot of people thought of that original game that came out in 2013. It allows people to kind of enjoy that story again in a way that fits in with kind of modern graphic styles and quality that allows you to have that rose-tinted glasses view of the game. And then the show itself kind of does that as well. It's an interesting parallel to it, I think, that in terms of how it works and why people like consuming it now as opposed to going back to the original.
Something that I noticed while watching The Last of Us TV show is that, and I don't know how I feel about this. I don't know if what I'm about to say is a good thing or not. Maybe it's just a testament to the quality of the story. But even with the sense of agency removed, meaning I'm not a player, I'm not controlling the characters in this TV show. I'm just watching what happens. I don't have to manage the inventory for what I see on screen. I don't have to crouch and hide from enemies, right? There's no sense of agency, but it still totally works. Like, even with that removed from the equation, it still feels like The Last of Us. And that's something that I noticed, like, oh, I'm watching The Last of Us passively, and I still get the same feels. And maybe that just means the story stands on its own, and everything around it, all the gameplay around it, is just sort of like a side. It's like a little salad that you put on the side to enjoy the story, which I guess it's not a bad thing, maybe.
No, I don't think it is. I mean, I think that they did a really interesting balancing act, because there are parts of this show that feel like they're ripped right out of the game. And I always think back to the very first episode when they're escaping the house and the initial wave of zombies in the pickup truck. A lot of that stuff almost feels like you're playing the game, as your point of view is from inside the pickup truck as they're trying to avoid crowds of people and other vehicles and stuff. That feels, just because that's what you do in the game, is you drive the pickup truck and try to get away. And it feels very much like being in the game, yet they did a good job of really considering the material and figuring out where it made sense to either add to the story or deviate from it in certain ways.
I guess maybe it's not too dissimilar from watching a Twitch stream of somebody playing The Last of Us,
Yeah, I suppose that's true, yeah.
Yeah, there was definitely a couple of bits where you could point to scenes where they were like, oh, that's definitely looks like it was playable in the game. I think that, like you mentioned, the truck at the beginning and the bit when they're in the museum and they're crouching around. Yeah. I was watching that. I was thinking, oh, this is like I'm playing it, like I'm watching someone else play a video game, really. Yeah. Which it's not a bad thing. It was still very tense, but you could. But it was an interesting decision that they decided to keep some of the game elements in it, and even some of the we'll drop some links in the show notes of these the scene comparisons, and even some of the dialogue and the way the camera is in some of the scenes, even the character moments are ripped straight from the video game in quite a unbelievably close way. And it's interesting they decided to do that, but I guess it was just a case of honoring what people's love for the video game while also trying to create something new. And I think they did a really good job at doing that balancing act of making it great great for new people, but also
Yeah.
good for people who love the game.
Ultimately, I think it really helps here that this is a very narrative-driven video game, and that is why I think it works as a TV show above all else. I mean, I think that the Naughty Dog, the game developers, made it easy for the producer of the show. That's not to like really, I don't know, put down the talent behind the actual TV show, but I think it was the kind of story that really, and the kind of video game story that works on TV. It's not like you were playing through levels and doing bosses. I mean, I think a lot of games, like, you know, you think about things like the original Mario Brothers movie, or I don't know, Tomb Raider. Some of them really don't work very well as movies because there's something about the way the gameplay works that doesn't translate well into a narrative.
Yeah, totally. I totally agree with that. It's I think they just took a really unique approach to it, and also I think what was interesting as well, how they added some of the characters from the video game into the show. So some of the actors. So there was the woman who plays there's a character in the last episode, Federica, which I guess we're not going to spoil for you, but who appears in the first scene. That's the actress who plays Ellie in the video game. And the guy who was second in command to David, the cannibal, he played Joel in the video game. So they've also the way they've honoured the video game and collaborated with the people who worked on it. Obviously, went as far as actually casting some of the people who were in the video game in the TV show. I think that just shows how careful they were with the source material.
All right, before we wrap up, I think we should discuss spoilery content, because even though I haven't watched the final episode, I know how the story ends because I've played the game, and I wanted to know from you, Jonathan, first. What was your reaction to again, spoilers, to Joel deciding to save Ellie, even though that means potentially compromising the chance at figuring out some kind of immunity for the rest of mankind?
It's a difficult one. It's kind of interesting and frustrating. I think I have more of a kind of a practical, pragmatic sort of view, where if I was in that position, I would have probably thought, well, it's difficult to say, but I would have probably wanted to find the cure because it's more big picture stuff. But then I could see where he was coming from with wanting to save Ellie. But then also you're just thinking, well, you would have saved mankind. This was a big deal. And I think the ultimately the most interesting part to come out of that is the fact that he doesn't tell Ellie that's what he did, and she was the only hope that they had. And he gives the impression that there was other people involved, so she didn't need to worry. And keeping that secret from her was very interesting. And I think, well, I've unfortunately read a couple of spoilers for the next season, but I know that this secret will obviously play into the next season, and I think that does set up a really interesting character dynamic. And I think that's ultimately what the show's been focused on, right? Is these character dynamics between the two lead people and also some of the other characters, and this just adds to that, and I think will make it even more interesting going forward. But an interesting choice, I think, and I did ultimately like it, I think.
What about you, John?
Well, I this is one place where I feel like the TV show maybe didn't work as well as the video game. I like that tension, and I like that conflict and the moral dilemma of the ending, and I think it worked really well in the game. I haven't played to the end, but I know enough about the game to kind of know, and I've seen enough to know how the game ends. And in the TV show, I kind of felt like, I don't know, I just felt like, wait, is that the last episode? It felt a little anticlimactic, almost like when he lies to her and it just ends. It is a cliffhanger in a sense, I suppose, for a second season, but I don't know. I felt like there wasn't enough of a dramatic ending to it to make it feel like the end of a typical TV show. I'm not. It's hard to explain, but I didn't quite. It didn't quite engage me the way that the game did.
Yeah, I think I see where you're coming from, and I was maybe a little bit frustrated as well. But I think ultimately what you were saying, like it felt like an odd ending, And I think doing something different on a TV show was why I thought it was interesting. But I can absolutely see why it would be really frustrating for a lot of other people. How about you, Federico?
I've always been in Team Joel. Like, I think in his position, I would have probably done the same thing. Maybe like, and I see a lot of people saying, well, but he had to kill all those, doctors and people at the clinic, hospital, structure, whatever, to save Ellie, to rescue Ellie. And like to save one person, not only do you compromise the chance of a cure, but you also have to kill other people. And yeah, I get all that, but in the context of this, fictional story where there's zombies around, and Joel sees, his daughter in Ellie, and it kind of feels like my read on that is that Joel has always felt like this was his second shot at being a father figure for somebody, and he maybe felt responsible for the first time around, and he kind of wanted to make things right, even though that means like putting his own interests and putting his own feelings ahead of the feelings of humanity and the good of humanity, which is such a complicated thing to think about, right? Like, would you rather sacrifice a person you really care about with all the baggage that comes with that, or would you do the thing for the greater good? Like, and like, it's so complex. But I've always felt like I never got personally, when I played the game and when I read about the game, I've always felt that was the natural choice. Like, of course he's gonna save her, and of course he's not gonna go ahead with a plan of like, yeah, let's use her as basically this experiment to maybe save humanity. Of course, he's not going to do that. So, and of course, that also becomes a very interesting plot device for the second game and for the second season of the TV show. Because, like you said, Jonathan, he keeps it a secret, and that will have repercussions later on. So, in the context of the story, not only do I understand it as a motivation of the character, but it also makes the story more interesting later on.
Yeah.
Yeah, it really does. I mean, he's a complicated figure, right? He's a flawed individual, and he's acting in many ways in a very selfish way, but it's that tension and drama that really makes it a compelling story, I think. And I'm kind of with you, Federico. I'm kind of Team Joel too.
Yeah. I don't think anyone could really 100% say that they would be one way or the other. I think even though you're Team Joel, you've still got a lot of sort of addendums to your commitment to Joel. It's well, I would be Team Joel, but
definitely,
and I think everyone would. I don't think you'd find anyone who'd be 100% one way or the other.
All right, everybody. Thanks again for joining us live in the Club Max Stories Discord to talk about The Last of Us TV show and video game. I want to thank Jonathan Reed for joining us again this month. Thanks, Jonathan.
No problem.
And thanks, Federico. I will be seeing you on App Stories next, I think.
In a few hours. Right. if I don't find too much traffic on my way back home.
Good. All right. Well, we'll keep our fingers crossed. Thanks again to everybody who's in the chat, and we'll see you all again next month. Bye-bye.
Bye.